All right, so let's dive into some pretty interesting stuff today. This is fascinating. We're going to be looking at a political showdown in India. And you know how much I love when we have big personalities clashing,
Yeah.
especially when it involves some larger-than-life figures.
Oh, yeah. It's always a good show, isn't it?
Always. And this one is especially juicy. We're talking about Yogi Adityanath, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, and Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal. And the backdrop for all of this drama is no less than the Maha Kumbh,
Wow.
one of the largest religious gatherings in the entire world.
It's incredible how these events can just become like these flashpoints, isn't it? You have this massive pilgrimage, so much tradition, millions of devotees, and then suddenly it's like, boom, right at the center of a political storm.
It's true, and it all started when Banerjee criticized the Maha Kumbh, even going so far as to call it the Mrityu Kumbh.
Which
It
means
translates to death kumbh.
Death Kumbh, okay.
After a stampede, a tragic stampede occurred.
Hmm.
And it was a pretty harsh statement to make, especially considering the Kumbh's significance for so many Hindus.
And that's where the political maneuvering gets really interesting because shortly after Banerjee makes that statement, there was a tragic death during Holi celebrations in West Bengal, which is her state. And Adityanath, who had been relatively quiet up until this point, he sees the opportunity and just unleashes this powerful counterattack.
Oh, he did not hold back.
No, he did not.
He very pointedly compared the peaceful Holi celebrations in Uttar Pradesh, which, if you don't know, has a way bigger population than West Bengal,
All right, much larger.
to the unfortunate incident that happened in Banerjee's state. He even said, quote, "Those who couldn't manage law and order during Holi are the ones who called the Maha Kumbh Mrityu Kumbh."
He really wanted to drive that contrast home, didn't he? Basically
Yeah.
saying, look, you're criticizing this massive event, but you can't even handle things in your own backyard.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to turn the tables on her, make her look hypocritical, considering what happened in her own state.
Exactly, using her own words against her.
It's like a political chess match. Every move is calculated for maximum impact. And he didn't stop there. He took things even further by renaming the Maha Kumbh as the Mrityunjay Kumbh,
Which
the victory over death Kumbh.
Okay, so he's not just defending it, he's reframing it.
Exactly. He's completely flipping the script on
It's
this.
just smart.
It's brilliant. And, it not only counters her criticism, but it shifts the whole narrative to one of resilience and triumph.
It's really powerful how language can be used like that, subtle, but it can really control the message and how the public perceives things.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. Remember how Banerjee implied that people from West Bengal would avoid the Kumbh?
Right, like they would boycott it almost.
Yeah, well, guess what? It turns out that a lot of people who attended were actually from her state.
Oh, so that completely undermines her point.
Completely. It's
Yeah.
like he knew this was going to happen and used it to his advantage. He's good?
He's playing 4D chess here.
He really is. But it wasn't just Banerjee he addressed in his speech. He also had some pretty interesting things to say to a group of journalists who were covering the whole thing.
Oh, that's right. The media angle. This is
Yeah.
where we start to see another dimension of this story unfold because Adityanath really acknowledged how important the media is, especially for shaping how the public sees events like the Maha Kumbh.
He was giving them a lot of praise, wasn't he?
He even said that the positive coverage they provided was part of what made the Kumbh a global event.
That's a big statement.
He's acknowledging how much power they have to spread the message and reach a wider audience.
But he wasn't just there to sing their praises, was he?
No, there was definitely another side to it. He also issued a bit of a warning about the need for responsible reporting, especially now with social media, because misinformation can just spread so quickly. He emphasized how important it is to avoid negativity and, just stick to the facts.
It seems like he's walking a fine line there, almost like he's acknowledging how powerful the media is, but he also wants to control the narrative a bit.
It's like he's saying, hey, you guys did great, but don't get carried away.
Right, and it makes you think about, what's the underlying message here? What's he really trying to say?
Yeah, it was really interesting how he kind of balanced those two things. Like he was praising them, but also giving them a little bit of a warning, you know?
Like, don't forget who's in charge here kind of vibe.
Exactly. And it makes you think about that relationship between the government and the press, because on the one hand, the government wants positive coverage, right? They want to showcase events like the Kumbh in a good light. It makes them look good.
Yeah, shows they can handle these big events and, it kind of promotes that national pride.
Right, exactly. But then journalists have this responsibility to be accurate and fair, even if that means showing the stuff the government might not love so much.
Yeah, so where's the line? How did journalists handle that?
That's the tough part, isn't it? They need to show the whole picture, the good, the bad, all the complexities. You can't just ignore the challenges or the criticisms. That wouldn't be real reporting.
So it's like this constant tension between the government wanting good press and journalists needing to tell the truth.
Yeah, that tension exists pretty much everywhere, I think, especially in democracies, because governments rely on the media to get their message out. But journalists are supposed to hold those in power accountable. So it's this delicate balance.
And it gets even trickier now because of how fast information spreads online, like you mentioned. Social media is where a lot of people get their news,
Yeah.
and things can go viral in a second, whether they're true or not.
That's where media literacy comes in, right? Like, it's not just about journalists doing their job well, it's about giving people the tools to figure out what's real and what's not.
So it's like a two-way street. Journalists have to report responsibly, and people need to be careful about what they believe.
Exactly. It's about actively engaging with the news, asking questions, looking at things from different angles, and checking things before you just accept them as facts.
It's almost like we need to be detectives these days, like piecing together the clues to figure out if someone's trying to mislead us.
Right. And that means you might have to look at stuff that makes you uncomfortable or that challenges what you already think, because sometimes the truth is messy.
It's easy to stay in your little bubble where everyone agrees with you, but that doesn't really give you the full picture.
And it makes you way more vulnerable to believing stuff that isn't true, especially if it fits with what you already think.
That's why it's so important to listen to different points of view, have real conversations, and be open to changing your mind if you see evidence that contradicts what you thought.
It's a process. You're always learning and unlearning things. It's not about being right all the time. It's about being willing to admit when you might be wrong.
It's about being humble, I guess, and accepting that we don't know everything.
Yeah, and I think that's where the real excitement is, because when you're not afraid to question things, that's when you really start to learn and grow and be open to new ideas.
So we've gone from this political fight to talking about how the media works, to the importance of thinking critically and being good citizens. It's amazing how these things connect.
Yeah. It's like this whole thing that started with Adityanath and Banerjee has opened up this bigger conversation about the challenges we face as a society and how we can address them.
Okay, so we've looked at the politics,
Yeah.
the media, and even how we as individuals consume information. What else is there? What can we take away from all of this?
Well, I think Adityanath gave us a clue when he talked about those historical figures who were both freedom fighters and journalists.
Oh yeah, like Gandhi and all those guys.
Exactly. He was saying that journalism isn't just about reporting the news, it's about making things better, about holding people in power accountable and fighting for what's right.
So journalists are kind of like modern day freedom fighters, using their words to fight for truth and justice.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, and it's not just about big national stuff, it's about local communities, everyday people, the stories that don't always get told.
That's what's so cool about journalism.
Hmm.
It can be about these huge global events, or it can be about what's happening in your own neighborhood, and it can have such a big impact on people's lives. But that means there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it.
Absolutely. And especially now, with everything being so complicated and the media changing so fast, we have to remember the core values of journalism: truth, accuracy, fairness, independence. That's what makes a free press work. And a free press is crucial for a healthy democracy.
Because ultimately, democracy works best when people are informed, when they're engaged, and when they have the power to be part of the decisions that affect their lives. And that's where journalism comes in.
It all comes back to that idea that our choices matter both as individuals and as a society. And those choices are based on the information we have and the stories we believe.
So how do we make sure we're getting good information and being part of the conversation in a positive way?
Yeah.
It feels like there's so much to think about.
Yeah, it's like we're talking about some kind of superpower here. You know,
Well,
the power of information, the power of telling a story, the power to change how people see things and make things happen. It's a lot to process.
it really is. And I think that's why this whole thing that started with Adityanath and Banerjee, it's bigger than just some political fight.
Hmm.
It's about recognizing how much power there is in who tells the story and in us as the audience, you know?
Right, because it's not like we're just sitting here passively taking it all in. We have to actually think about it and engage with it. Be responsible about it.
I like to think of it like this in a democracy. Everyone is part of this huge conversation that never ends.
Yeah.
And to be a good part of that conversation, you need to be informed.
Mhm.
You need to be smart about what you believe, and you have to be willing to question yourself.
Right.
So it's not enough to just, skim the headlines or scroll through your feed for a few seconds. We have to really dig into things, question where the information is coming from, and try to see things from different sides.
Absolutely. You have to be a little bit skeptical, not cynical, but skeptical in the sense of like asking yourself, okay, who is telling me this and why are they telling it this way? What am I not seeing here?
That's like being a detective almost,
Oh, yeah.
looking for clues, trying to figure out if someone is trying to pull one over on you.
Sometimes that means looking at stuff that you don't want to look at or that goes against what you already believe because the truth isn't always pretty and easy, you know?
It's comfortable to hang out with people who all think the same way, but then you're missing out on the bigger picture.
And you're way more likely to fall for something that isn't true, especially if it already fits into how you see the world.
So it's really important to listen to other people have real conversations and be open to changing your mind if you see good evidence that you were wrong about something
It's all about being humble and admitting that you don't know everything.
and being okay with that.
And honestly, I think that's where the fun is, because when you can question things and be curious, that's when you really start to learn and grow.
So we started with this political battle in India, and now we're talking about the power of information and how important it is to be thoughtful about what we consume and how we participate in this whole, global conversation. It's amazing how these things connect.
And I think it all comes back to that idea that we have choices to make both as individuals and as a society. And those choices are shaped by what we know and what we believe.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of inspiring in a way because it means we're not just along for the ride. We actually have the power to make a difference.
Exactly. And that's what I hope people take away from this conversation. It's not about passively accepting whatever you're told. It's about thinking critically, engaging thoughtfully, and really wanting to understand the truth.
Well said. That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been a
No.
fascinating conversation.
It really has my pleasure.